Muted.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. We were just having some quick technical difficulties, but thank you very much for joining our webinar. Today's topic is maximize your water resources. Once again, if you guys are having any technical difficulties, please send me a private message at TRCA host. Otherwise, please type your questions in the chat bar and we'll get them answered for you at the end of the session. So today's agenda, so I'll be sort of introducing the topic, and then we have Bruce Taylor from Enviro-Stewards who will be overviewing best practices in water management as well as case studies that he's worked on. On to, I guess, the webinar. Partners in Project Green. So to introduce myself, my name is Alyssa, and I work as the Water Stewardship Project Coordinator for Partners in Project Green. Partners in Project Green's main goal is to create the Pearson Eco-Business Zone, which would be an internationally recognized community known for its competitive, high-performance, and eco-friendly business climate. We operate in 3 municipalities and span a variety of sectors, and also operate in 4 main performance areas, including energy performance, water stewardship, waste management, and communications and engagement. Here are a bounty of our members. I believe as of last week, we were just about at around 90 members. And if you're interested in learning more about membership, please feel free to contact myself or Alexandra at the end of the session. So on to the topic you came to listen to today, which is holistic water management. So what exactly do we mean by this? So basically it's pulled from the principles of integrated water resources management or watershed management, which is a process which promotes the coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources in order to maximize the resultant economy and social welfare in an equitable manner without compromising the sustainability of vital ecosystems. So as you can see, there's many sort of different facets to water management. We have economic constraints, social constraints, as well as physical constraints. And this sort of integrated holistic approach is looking at all these aspects and seeing how we can kind of deal with them in an integrated fashion where there will be mutually beneficial results for all parties. So now you're asking, how do we apply this to businesses? So basically, this holistic approach to water management was introduced to us through our partners at Credit Valley Conservation Authority through the concept of One Water, which is basically looking at all of the integrated systems that a facility would use for water management and looking at how they're very interconnected. So this chart here shows sort of the flow of water that could potentially exist within a system and within a facility, and how one process is very interdependent on another, and that we can actually sort of take a step back and rather than sort of focusing solely on one element, look at a holistic model and see from a facility level how we can actually maximize the different aspects of on-site water management. So basically by integrating all these sort of services together, we're able to create mutually beneficial results and actually improve sustainability. So where are we actually seeing this holistic approach being adopted? So we see this happening a little bit more in water-stressed regions, ones that are prone to flooding as well as droughts. So for instance, companies in California as well as Australia are really looking more at this approach. Then we're also seeing it in the food and beverage manufacturing sector. So this chart on your right-hand side shows some of the key players that are really looking at a more holistic approach to water management and have really found success in integrating their approach, looking at water as sort of a key element of their business and looking at how they can kind of limit and reduce their risks. We also see utilities companies as well as first movers and innovators, and I'll speak to this in a little bit, but this is really key for areas like in the Greater Toronto area where there is sort of a perceived idea of water abundance. Mainly first movers and innovators in the Greater Toronto area are key to sort of push this agenda of holistic water management forward. As well as we see companies with an entrenched sustainability mandate really looking at their water usage from a more holistic and facility-wide approach. And it's basically any company who recognizes that water is at the core of their business that are really sort of adopting this holistic approach. So as far as water stewardship programming goes, we at Partners in Project Green are actually offering a wide variety of programs to try and tackle all of the different challenges with water management at a facility level and kind of taking a more holistic approach to our programming. So our collective infrastructure projects look at tackling low-impact development challenges and look at how we can take someone's runoff and actually either create an environmental benefit or potentially reuse it within their processes. Then our water auditing program is looking at partnering with existing municipal programs and looking at facilities challenges and how to actually optimize and maximize their current processes to reduce their water footprint. And then our innovative water technologies is looking at how to actually approach water management challenges from an innovative perspective and implementing very unique technologies. So as far as case studies in the Greater Toronto Area that we've seen that have been taking a more holistic approach to water management, there is Calstone, which is a furniture manufacturer located in the Highland Creek watershed. And their first foray into water management was basically seeing a used farmer's stainless steel tank in the middle of a field and deciding to put that in their plant, disconnect one downspout and collect rain into a cistern to be used for cooling spot welders and for toilet fixtures. So basically they're taking sort of rainwater and runoff and actually using the gray water within their process and sort of closing the loop in their water management and in their system. Later on, they contacted partners in Project Green, and we actually helped them out on a further project for water stewardship, which was basically looking at connecting or disconnecting another 3 downspouts, feeding it into a rainwater harvesting tank, and looking at infiltrating it into the Highland Creek, so therefore benefiting the local watershed. And then also looking at reusing some of this water for irrigation and for landscaping. Overall, the second phase of the project, they were able to capture about 1.9 million liters of rainwater and infiltrate that into the Highland Creek watershed. So sort of what we're looking at is this holistic approach to water management can definitely be applied at a facility level, but it takes more than one facility to really have an impact on a watershed or cross watersheds. So what Partners in Project Green is really looking at doing is how do we sort of replicate these projects and show best management practices to grow our network and then have even more of a sort of larger benefit on our watersheds. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Bruce Taylor to speak. So Bruce Taylor is the president of Enviro-Stewards Inc. He's a chemical engineer with 25 years of experience and has expertise in the fields of energy efficiency, pollution prevention, water efficiency, toxics use reduction, sustainable development, and treatment process design. Mr. Taylor received the MVP2 Honorable Mention Award from the USA National Pollution Prevention Roundtable and the 2010 John de Gonzague Memorial Pollution Prevention Visionary Award, which is the highest award in this field in Canada. His international development work includes construction of an orphanage in Sudan, earthquake relief in El Salvador, cleaner production training in Laos, and establishing sustainable water projects in South Sudan and Kenya. So I am giving the controls over to Bruce. And yeah, take it away, Bruce. Bruce, I believe you muted yourself. Bruce? Oh, perfect.
How about
Bruce, you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Take it away. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that. So, make a wait. Okay, so thank you very Thank you for joining us. The slide in front of you is just the agenda. Just to give an idea, we're going to go through the approach we use. It's very holistic and integrated, where you don't just consider water, you consider energy, toxics, hazardous waste, and you come up with different answers by integrating them all. So we'll go through sort of that approach, some best practices, and then some specific challenges, and we'll answer a few of those, and then we'll open it up. There may be some other challenges that you have on your end. Just briefly, Enviro-Stewards, an engineering company, certified B Corporation. B Corporation is somewhere between a for-profit and a not-for-profit, where there's a third party certifying your governance, workers, community, environment. Our score happened to be so high they gave us an award. But our corporate mission is to help facilities increase their profit, sustain the environment, and benefit society. Although I'm getting an incredible echo on my end. Is anybody else getting that? Enviro-Stewards is a member of several organizations, so we're an eco-solution provider through Partners in Project Green, through Sustainable Waterloo Region, where our office is located. We're a pledging member. We've committed to cut our own footprint by 80%. I've already reduced 70%. Living wage in Waterloo Region is about $16 an hour. So we're committed to paying everybody, every intern, supplier, administrative person, at least that amount. The Safe Water Project, this project we helped start in East Africa. So there's 6 of them now, 4 in South Sudan, 2 in Kenya, where we, rather than just bringing in some expensive technology that's just going to break after a little while, we teach them how to build sustainable water treatment systems themselves and set them up as a small business where they make and sell those. So basically, they're making something that's called a slow sand filter or a biofilter. They're under $100, and the local people, it's cheaper for them to buy that than to what they're presently spending on medicine. One needle for typhoid is $100. We're also involved with various regional programs on water conservation, and so some of it's applicable. Each one has their own flavor. So York Region, which is kind of the top end of Partners in Project Green, they pay for totally free water audits, and they're integrated. So not just water, they'll look at the effects that it'll have on your pollution, energy conservation, co-benefits, that kind of thing. And then they have some implementation co-funding, up to 30 cents per liter per day saved. Similarly, Guelph has similar implementation funding, and they have an engineer on staff who can come and help with facilities. Region Waterloo, co-fund assessments, implementation funding, and Toronto has a block 2 water rate, where if you have a valid plan, then they'll give you a lower rate on all the water you buy. And so we're involved with the certification of those plans. So I think the best way to illustrate the concept is with a case study, and then I'll get into more specifics. So a case study, everybody's familiar with donuts. So the icing on the outside of the donuts and the fruit fillings are made at an important subsidiary called Fruition. It's in Oakville. And basically they take raw ingredients, process it through a series of vats, and fondant is a fancy name for icing on a donut. And they package it in terms of totes, pails, and whatnot, primarily for their restaurants. And so taking a look at this fondant process itself, every time it's cleaned, it lost a lot of water. Before, they're cleaning it every 16 hours, so that's 8 times a week. And so every time they did that, they used all this water. They lost, I think, 1,000 kilograms of DOD to the sewer, and quite a bit to the landfill also. So instead, we modified it so it can run continuously instead of in batches, and also sequence through the batches. So you start vanilla, maple, chocolate. So you're going to clean it once a week instead of every once every 16 hours. So that gives you an idea of one type of recommendation. Here's the floor. And so very often when you were in there before the study, there'd be somebody hosing the floor down. And so They're getting rid of this icing sugar from the floor, basically. And so if you, with this type of approach, it's just to say, how can we wash that down the floor more efficiently? You say, well, why is it on the floor? When we found it was the sugar delivery system, which we were able to rework so it didn't lose it on the floor. Now you don't need to wash the floor. The floor is dry all the time. And so between those and some other things, you can see their water dropped 60%. Their BOD, which is their organics going to the sewer, dropped by 80%. Even though during the same period, the production increased by 2/3. And so you see this, in their case, they were able to eliminate the need for their own treatment plant. So otherwise, they would have needed to build a biological treatment plant. If you look at the footprint before and after, about 30% less energy, 90% less to landfill, 80% less organics in the sewer, 60, 70% less wastewater volume, that kind of thing. So those are kind of environmental metrics. Financially, these are their numbers: electricity, gas, wastewater, greenhouse gas, landfill, sewer surcharge, $490,000. So a lot of people think that it's a dichotomy of you're going to do environment or economics. Well, this type of investment, how much it costs them to implement? Implementing everything costs them $190,000. So that's 0.4-year payback, 260% ROI. There are actually very few investments you can make that are going to guarantee you 260% ROI for the next 20 years, right? And so it's actually very lucrative to implement sustainability measures. It's not a trade-off. That particular project, they took 1% of what they saved and they sponsored 40 water filters in Africa. And so between the economic, environmental, and social strength of the project, they were selected as one of the top 5 projects in Canada for sustainability for 2014. And then they've also featured on their internet, on their sustainability report. And this past December, we went back and revisited every one of those water filters. 39 of the 40 were still running. We refurbished the 40th one, and it's running now too. So that's kind of the illustration of the approach with the case study. Now I'm just going to go into it a bit more detail. So we call it who, what, why, where, when. So who, you're talking about change. So whatever you change in there is going to, there's going to be some resistance to change. And all of us are resistant. But the best way to overcome that is to be involved in the whole process. So we'll figure out who's going to be affected, and we'll get them in a room at the beginning. So give me your sanitation manager, engineering manager, maintenance manager, a couple of your cleaner operators, managers, and we do a training session on how you do this type of work right at the beginning. So everybody's involved with understanding what we're doing with the purpose, and then we get that same team together and have a progress meeting. Here's what we found, here's what we're thinking and recommending, and we kick those ideas around, and we come out with maybe a dozen ideas that team thinks are worth considering. Then we go to the economic business case for those, generate their assessment. So this is the Jackson Triggs Winery in Oliver, BC. They had a problem with their wastewater. They're using 85% of the town's treatment capacity. So the town couldn't grow, so they're pushing on them to do treatment. And so we did a study in 2 phases. First we did technical changes, and we cut the BOD, like the organics, in half. Then we did procedural type changes and cut it in half again. And so for the procedural, you need even greater involvement. So we got their cleaner operators, we knew which were the critical processes in the plant, reworked them with them, and then had them train the rest of the operators. Similarly on the water, a good winery will use 3 liters per liter of wine. They were already better than that when we started, and now we cut them down to less than 1 liter. Now the net result is they saved $1.5 million on their treatment plant because it's now half as big as it would have been. So the volume of water is very key, and then that treatment system got them down to below their bylaw limit, and they were able to. Here's a waste heat boiler with the biogas that we're generating from the wastewater treatment. Here's a odor control system. So then the next step is what? So this is the expensive part. Basically, we have all these clamp-on water flow meters and whatnot, and whatever resource you're trying to save, you want to, it can be even simple like bucket and stopwatch, but you want to find out where it's going. And so you get a continuous log for the week of where the water is being used. And you use that, so these are our primary contributors. So 1, 2, 3. These processes are using almost all the water in the plant. So if I get a 10% improvement here, it's better than eliminating these 3 altogether. So you focus your attention where it's going to do the most good. And that comes from the Pareto principle. Pareto was an Italian nobleman, figured out that most of the land is owned by 20% of people, so I'm going to tax them. It's a great idea. Also, where is important. Say here's a chicken plant, and so if you've got some sealed water here that you don't need, and you're right beside here where you're washing crates, then it maybe makes good economic sense to reuse it right here. Whereas if you're trying to use it over here, it's more challenging. So it affects the economics. And so where in the process and where geographically is important. Then why? So most processes are established when water was relatively cheap, and it's not cheap anymore. And so the economics are different than when the process was established. And so it's good to take a good look at why. So here's a plant, and they were using water to cool welders again, just like that Calstone example. This isn't a Calstone plant. When we put our meter on, they're using 217 liters a minute of water. Now that's a lot of water to cool welders. So we're like, why are we using that much? But when we looked at it, we actually found that 173 of it is going backwards through this pump and back into this tank, then overflowing the tank. Whoops. And so, because the city pressure was higher than the other one, and so what we did is, backflow preventers and whatnot helped address that problem. So, taking a look back and saying, what is the water actually doing for us? What problem is it solving? And how do we solve the same problem with less water or without any water at all? So it's kind of a creative step. And then, how much would it actually cost? This particular case, that's a cost of a cooling tower. It's $70,000, but you're going to save $55,000 a year. You're going to get your money back in 1.3 years. You're going to make $750,000 in the next 20 years, and 77% ROI. This idea might have been around for 20 years, but nobody knows this answer. So it's getting streamlined to get to this answer. And then after you implement it, what effect did it have? So here's a Cargill plant in Guelph. And so they were using 120 gallons a minute of hot water to pasteurize. Afterwards, for Guelph, we went and monitored their savings and found it was 120 gallons a minute of hot water. And they got a rebate from Toronto towards their capital cost. Also, they saved all that money on their water and their gas. So some more best practices. So on the outdoor side, if you have an irrigation system, how effective is it? Are you spraying where you need it or not? So here's a particular case study by a company called Smart Watering Systems. And they found they were able to reduce the water 42%. In this case, selecting different plants, drip irrigation, that kind of thing. They also have features to go even further. You can measure soil moisture, predict weather, so that you're only irrigating when you need it. And like the other example that was shown, irrigate with rainwater, preferably fresh water. And rainwater harvesting is another best practice can be considered. There's this program that's on the internet, Connected Crops. And basically it can be used to help size based on your roof area, what's an appropriate size storage tank, and how much water can you reuse with it. That's kind of what that. And we use that as one of this project we did for City of Guelph. So Guelph and water that very hard water because a lot of it's from Guelph. And so they use a lot of spot remover, a lot of soap and whatnot to wash the faucets. So in this particular case, we took the roof leaders from the bus wash, put them in the tanks. We use it for the final rinse of the bus. Now you don't use much spot remover because it's naturally distilled water instead of the spark water. You use less soap and whatnot. There's potential to reuse that final rinse now as the initial rinse. We also use more efficient spraying also and whatnot. And that was part of it's called Showcasing Water Innovation. So there was funding from the problem for that. There's Cape Navel. So there was a system that we helped design to recycle and reuse 100% of water. We used a pressure clean booster rocket. And their goal was 100% water recycling. And it's a good theoretical goal, but sometimes you need to be careful because 100% recycling can have less environmental benefit than, say, 90%. Because when you get to 100%, now you've got some kind of concentrated waste that you need to get rid of. And so it's a good idea to think about where what's an appropriate amount. And also to think of the priority. First reduce, then reuse, then recycle. This is increasing cost and less decreasing the environmental benefit. If you cannot use the water in the first place, that's the best thing. You can just use it again without treating it for, say, a lower grade opportunity. And then recycling is the final. And very often a plant will say, should we put membranes on the end of our factory and reuse that water at the start of our factory? Well, that's a very challenging thing because by the end of the factory, every single waste in your plant is mixed together and you need to separate them all again. But if you were to do that analysis and you find 80% of the water is used by these three processes, if we take any of those three and treat that water, there's 90% less contaminants in that water, and we can reuse that right away. So we don't have all these other contaminants to deal with. So often it's very, if you are going to recycle it, good to consider recycling further upstream instead of at the end of the pipe. At the end of the pipe, you've got your membranes, so why not that they get clogged up and like that. So getting it, that leads us into some challenges, drivers, restraints, benefits. So one challenge is if you do save water, let's say you're successful. So say the York program, they've had 30 program participants. They're averaging about a third of the water being saved. Now, if I save about a third of my water, what happens to my concentration? The concentration is milligrams per liter. So if you save a third of the liters, then your concentration went up by a third. So won't my sewer surcharge go up? Well, the answer is yes, it will, because it's the concentration minus the bylaw limit divided by the bylaw limit times the volume times the rate. And so here's an example. So if you're using 1,000 cubic meters and you cut it in half to 500, when you do that math, you're going to end up with this difference in your VOD concentration. You're going to end up in this difference on your sewer bill. So you're going to pay $80 more on your sewer surcharge. However, what people don't realize is you're going to pay this much less on your water bill. And the net result, if you add those together, is $1,300 savings. So don't let saving water be a deterrent if you're thinking of what effect that's going to have on my sewer surcharge. Now, if you're just under 300 BOD, then if you did this, you might be put over 300, and now you need a sewer surcharge. So that's another evaluation. But in general, you want to have a sewer surcharge agreement because then it gives you protection if you ever do go over. You can't be fined because you've got an agreement for that. So sewer surcharge is one area that is sometimes a concern for people when they think about saving water, but it doesn't need to be because the cost of water nowadays justifies them. And by the way, you can also reduce it. When we do our water audits now, we also reduce BOD in the plant. Let's find your largest contributors, get them diverted out of the sewer. If we can get it further upstream, we can actually make product out of it, which was the case at Tim Hortons. They're actually able to make more donuts by not losing the ingredients in the first place and not pay for destroying it in the sewer. Is the best way to go. So first, if you're concerned about your sewer surcharge, look at ways to reduce the BOD in the plant. Another is lack of priority. A lot of people give water conservation low priority because they see, oh, we've got this enormous energy bill or these other things, or we want to start a new can line. But what a lot of people don't realize is the difference between cutting overhead costs and getting new top line revenue. If I were to save $10,000 a year, that's the same thing as selling and making $200,000 a year of product with my margin products. So think about how much work it would be to get another $200,000 every year of sales and then producing that and distributing it. That's the same benefit as just cutting your overhead by $10,000. And so that helps you get into it. Then you can put in your own margin here and see what it can go there. Another thing to help increase priority is to recognize top line. There's a lot of programs nowadays that give credibility for your sustainability story, and also a lot of customers are looking for that. And so it may give you market access through being more responsible. Also look at co-benefits. So there's the cost of water that you bought, but there's also the cost that you have of treating it. Did you soften that water, that kind of thing? Was it hot water? Was it steam you're losing? Is it condensate? Is it chilled water you're losing? Are you pumping that around? Every time you move that, you're using energy. Wastewater also contributes directly to your surcharges. If you are going to treat your wastewater, it affects the size and the cost of the treatment system. and the associated regulated compliance costs. So there's different co-benefits of it. And then another challenge we sometimes run into is this all sounds good, but where would we get the money to do this? Right? We need an assessment, right? And so that's why sometimes we now offer this shared savings approach where, okay, don't pay us. And if you like what we recommend and you implement it, then we're going to track it for you, and we'll share in the savings with you. So basically going to find opportunities to develop a business case, which is the typical first assessment, then help get things implemented, and then monitor, track, and report it. Hey, this thing's falling off the rails. It was saving this much, now it's this much. Somebody's throwing a valve, let's go and get an email alert or like that. And so assess it. And so what I'll do is I'll open it up to Alyssa. If there's any additional questions, feel free.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce. We have some questions for you to start off with. If you want to actually, I think I can pass the presentation back to myself. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. But I'll go with a couple that we have right away. So the first question is the recent surcharge that Mississauga is implementing in 2016 a factor in your work? And I guess an add-on to that would be, I guess Waterloo has that surcharge already in effect, so have you seen any sort of repercussions for your work as well?
Mm-hmm. I'm more familiar with the Toronto one than the Mississauga one. So the Toronto have been considering having surcharge individually for BOD, TSS, oil and grease, and paying for each of them, which would have had a large bearing on, because let's say I drop a kilogram of oil, a kilogram of oil will show up as a kilogram of TSS, a kilogram of oil and grease, about 1 or 2 kilograms of BOD, and also nitrogen and phosphorus, because it's all in the same mass. So I think they were probably convinced that you're measuring the same thing multiple ways, so you can't charge for the same thing. So they went to the point where they just charge for the largest one. So I think it's BOD they charge for most of the time. And so in general, what happens is you're paid for the mass of what's going to, by mass I mean like kilograms. And so if you save water, the actual kilograms is the same. And so in theory, you'd pay the same amount on the surcharge. There's a little bit of wrinkle because the first 300 milligrams per liter is kind of already free because you already paid for it in the water. So that's the way that gets a little bit funky in the calculation. But in general, the water conservation doesn't actually detrimentally affect the surcharge. And the water savings are much greater than what you pay in the surcharge.
Okay. I think that, so I got a clarification from this person, and they were mainly also speaking to the stormwater surcharge that Mississauga is launching, I guess, in January of 2016. So if you've sort of seen any effects of that on your work.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. We actually think it's very strong for helping to justify water conservation and reuse for, outdoor. And so, say like the Guelph bus wash, we're thinking that folks in Mississauga will likely consider that. The challenge with rainwater harvesting reuse is the paybacks are longer. So you might be a decade to get your money back, versus the in-plant water conservation, it might be a year or less to get your water. So because there's now a driving force economically on the stormwater side, some folks, they're telling us that they're going to be paying like $30,000 a year for that stormwater, and they could get 50% of it back if they meet these categories of harvesting and reuse. So that gives you a driving force of $15,000 a year you can put towards capital. The expensive part of rainwater harvesting is the storage. And so there's different ways to look at storage, but there's not money involved, and so often there's not a big driving force. So this gives you a driving force of, first you don't have to buy the water from Mississauga, but plus you can reduce that sewer surcharge. So we're thinking that it's going to have a large benefit with respect to rainwater harvesting and reuse for flushing toilets, irrigation, and other aspects.
Okay, and that actually filters well into this next question, which is how receptive are companies in looking beyond typical ROI and payback periods to implement a water project?
Yeah, that's why the York one's actually refreshing, where when they do their water conservation audits, they recognize that you need to sweeten the business deal. So they allow the pollution prevention and energy conservation aspects associated to be factored in the business case. So let's say you're using 1,000 cubic meters of oil or condensate. Yeah, the water is this much, but you're spending that much again just on the gas. So if you include those together, it's actually more attractive than if you just look at the water. And so it's very helpful to look at the whole business. How much does all of this cost us? So I would say that's the case.
Okay, cool. And then looks like we have another question. Another couple of questions, actually. So are any companies looking at water use or cost savings in their supply chain, I guess from your experience?
We're doing a winery chain, a Canadian winery chain right now, under that performance-based approach where it's shared savings. And we've saved them quite a bit of grape juice wine, and we're basically determining what effect does that have on the supply chain. Because if you need 5% less grapes to make the same quantity of product, how much irrigation savings is that back in your supply chain? How much fuel avoided, and all that kind of thing. So some are. Walmart's not doing a bad job. They're pushing back on their supply chain. So your best gains, Steelcase actually. So we did some stuff for Steelcase before where Steelcase actually paid for the water audit at their supply chain member so that there was more margin left in their supply chain member and their suppliers became healthier. And so that was very proactive of them. So sometimes it is, because it's all about partnerships and long-term strength. And so any water you save, the effect is outside of the walls of that facility. And so you're increasing the margin at that facility. It's stronger. They're going to be around better. They're going to be able to keep their better employees like me. So a lot of people see investment in their supply chain as helpful.
Okay, perfect. No, and that's really interesting too. Is companies that are, I guess, looking beyond their operations and looking to sort of source sort of sustainability and sustainable sort of suppliers as well. All right. So the next question is based on the debate of full cost water pricing and how that continues to happen. And do you see your clients understanding this dynamic, or how do they sort of approach you about this?
You mean full cost water pricing for the utility company?
I think it's just referring to the fact that right now sort of the cost of water is really cheap, and it's not necessarily reflective of the actual cost of treatment and pumping and the energy behind it. So it's the question, I guess, is referring to whether or not your clients that you work with understand that they're not actually paying the full cost.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So we do work across Canada, and say, for example, in Alberta, people are paying $1 a cubic meter, and here they're closer to $3 a cubic meter. So 3 times for the same commodity, And we actually have more capacity here in Ontario than Alberta. But the downside is it's harder to justify implementing stuff when the cost is too low. And so utilities are supposed to be able to recover all the cost of what it costs to provide the water. But it's a question of what do they include in the formula? Is it just the energy used there, or is it also the cost of the pipes and maintaining them? And what is the value of water? Is it only the cost of moving around, or is there an inherent value? Another challenge is some municipalities have declining water prices. So the more you use, the less you pay, which basically discourages water conservation, because the first cubic meter you save is at the lowest rate of savings. Whereas if you have the opposite scale, the first cubic meter you save gets the largest savings. And so it's very helpful to encourage your municipalities to structure it to encourage conservation. And
okay.
I guess Wellington and Waterloo have figured out that it's actually, and York, that it's cheaper for them to pay an industry to reduce the water than for them to get more capacity from Wells or Lake Huron or wherever it's going to be.
Okay, okay, perfect. So we have another question that came in. So basically, this is around, I guess, water auditing. And someone's done a water audit of their facility. And from these audits, there were many suggestions to make sort of major high-level changes. But from your experience, is it also feasible to make minor changes and still have favorable payback and impact at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always a range. And so often it depends how thorough the assessment is and how thorough the water balance is that they generate. And so if you have a really good detailed water balance, some of them are going to be a lot easier than others. And it takes a real creative approach to whoever you bring in and your own team. Very often, say in the effluent treatment system, you might have a rotary screen with sprays on it that's going 24/7. And then just to take a step back, does it need to? But if it doesn't, let's put a solenoid and a timer on there. That's not a very expensive solution. You're going to save half the water, that kind of thing. So a lot of it comes down to why with the hammer the whole world is nailed. So if you're bringing a company that sells a particular technology, you ask them what you need, they're going to say, well, you need this technology. And it may be because that's the thing you need, but it's also the thing that they happen to be most familiar with. So whoever does the audit, there's a lot of providers under PPG's program. Get somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in then you'll be able to get some opportunities that don't need any capital. Let's just change the procedure like that. So very often when we do an audit, people will implement 2 or 3 of the things before you even leave the factory because there's no capital involved. And I'd say, we had a third-party audit, and the average payback was 1 year. Okay? Now there are things you can do with 5 years. If we get into rainwater harvesting, it might be 10 years. So there's always going to be good places to start.
Okay, perfect. I think we have another one that just came up. Okay, so I guess this is regarding projects that Enviro-Stewards usually focuses on. Is the target of Partners in Project Green and Enviro-Stewards to focus on large volume water users, or can you essentially assist anyone interested? So I know for Partners in Project Green, basically our mandate is to help reduce the water footprint of businesses in the Greater Toronto Area. So obviously we can have a larger impact when we work with businesses that do use large volumes of water, but we are sort of mandated to help any business that would approach us and have sort of water stewardship initiatives that they wanted to take on. How about you, Bruce?
Good question. So some of these regional programs, say like York Region, it's going to be similar. Anybody who approaches them would get a pre-audit, and York would hire us to do it. And so they could be of any size. Some of them are small, medium, large. On our own, say in Waterloo Region's launching a water efficient restaurant certification program. And so to help launch that program, they hired us to do 4 water audits at restaurants. And so we did like a Tim Hortons, Eastside Mario's, this steak chain, and then a local restaurant, Borealis it's called. And so we did water and energy conservation there. And so those are small restaurants, but they're still good opportunities on a percentage basis to save water. We find with the shared savings approach, we actually get to even smaller facilities because we don't need as much overhead to do those. So I guess ideally, the larger the better, but the majority of our clients are small and medium-sized enterprises.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Bruce. So I guess we're sort of winding down, so I'll take a couple more questions. So we have one that speaks to, I guess, water governance. So water-related business risks often originate from a collection of poor use and management decisions throughout a watershed. Do some of your clients go beyond internal eco-efficiency measures to try and engage more broadly in trying to bring about more sustainable governance? So I know from Partners in Project Green's side, a lot of our performance areas are governed by performance committees, which sort of consist of business representatives as well as municipal representatives. So we're trying to really, I guess, bridge that dialogue between industry and between the municipalities as well. And especially now that sort of the city of Mississauga has implemented this stormwater surcharge fee, and we have a few projects that sort of aim to tackle low impact development solutions for businesses and managing on-site stormwater. We've sort of seen a connection with their existing programming and with what we can offer and what some of our businesses have worked on. So there is that connection that we're always trying to bridge, but obviously we do see inherent challenges with trying to influence, I guess, governance and policy, but there is sort of that relationship that does exist. Bruce, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. So the conservation authorities, a couple of years ago, were doing a funding program through the government for pollution prevention. So a lot of it had to do with wellhead protection. So very often these aquifers end up being drinking water. And so, say post-Walkerton, and you see some of the causes of that, and you say, okay, how do we prevent it from happening in the first place? And so we did, I don't know, maybe 30 audits under that program for different conservation authorities. And it would be like we did a repair for municipal vehicles when in the shop. And you go there and you take a look at the outside and say, here's some totes with used oil. And basically when they do the oil change, it gets pumped out into these totes. And so for this type of audit, you just look and say, okay, what can happen here? There isn't a spill here yet, but what's going to happen? Well, it's a plastic tote. Sooner or later, somebody's going to drive in and break it. And you're pumping oil from inside, so sooner or later it's going to be full already, and somebody's going to pump it anyway. It's going to overflow. And then it's going to go down here and get in the storm drain and hit the environment. So when you look at what that risk is, now how do we redesign it so we don't have that risk in the first place? Well, if we had a large steel tank with bollards so you can't drive into it, we had level control so you can't pump to it when it's full, that would be much beneficial, but it's expensive. Then we say, okay, well, if we were actually to get say a truckload size, then the oil can actually be sold instead of paying somebody to suck out these totes. And if you do that, I think the payback dropped to 2.5 years. So you try and get to the business case there, right? So that was the nature of that one. Or similarly, Crater Valley Conservation, they had us do some demonstration assessments. So they have an interest in protecting the surface water, but recognize that the economic drivers are up in the plant. So they hired us to go in and do assessments in, I think about 4 factories. We found ways to save water, chemicals, that kind of in the factory, and ways to protect the environment on the outside. So some of those recommendations had to do with snow melt, drainage swale, silt, drain off, invasive species, these kinds of things were incorporated in, and they became tour sites for Great Valley.
Okay, perfect. This is, I guess, one of the last questions, unless one quickly comes through shortly. But basically, have either of your organizations done any auditing with facilities that deal with wildlife or plant life? So I know from Partners in Project Green, we have not had any experience sort of doing audits with those types of facilities, but at a conservation authority level, I believe TRCA has had experience with that, and so if I can put you in touch with the person who might be able to give you more information on that. Bruce, have you had any experience completing audits with facilities that deal with wildlife or plant life?
Depends how you define it. So we do lots of wineries, which would be grapes, and we do, say we're doing 13 plants for Maple Leaf right now. So that would be a lot of chickens and hogs and such. And very often it's good opportunities in a plant to save water, energy, sewer surface, that kind of thing. We haven't done any on, say, wild animals and whatnot. I do know somebody's done some work at the Toronto Zoo. We weren't personally involved with it, but maybe if you were to contact them, they might have a sustainability person who's done some things.
Okay, perfect. So I think there was a question a little bit ago that I was sort of saving for the end, which was how does one get involved with Partners in Project Green programming and take advantage of what we offer? So that sort of transitions well into sort of the conclusion of our presentation. So you can contact either myself or my colleague Eric for more information on water stewardship programming. We, generally speaking, will go on site and meet with your organization and sort of identify your challenges and what you'd like to focus in on for your water stewardship initiatives. Additionally, I wanted to also let attendees know about our upcoming networking event. So it's the 2015 Partners in Project Green Sustainability Duke Out on October 7th. And if any members are listening right now, there is free member registration until August 9th. So I highly encourage you to take advantage of that. Otherwise, I'd like to sincerely thank Bruce from Enviro-Stewards for coming and speaking today, and thanks to everyone out there who is listening. We'll be sending out a copy of the presentation and the link to you shortly. Thanks very much, and have a great afternoon. And thanks again, Bruce.
Thank you.